New studio, who dis? All right, audio might be a little bit echoey. Literally just got this semi set up last night. Hard walls, hard floor, nothing soft in the room yet. So hopefully this is bearable. You guys got questions? I got answers. First year med students at minimum will take 7 years before being and attending. Our current first year med students cooked for job prospects because of AI. Could AI hype be like the dot-com bubble that burst in the 2000s, or should we plan for submission to our AI overlords before we can pay back our crushing student loan debt of $200,000 to $300,000? That's from Manny Fresh 4251. Exodarks has another AI question on how do you think AI will impact the practice of medicine in the future? Which fields will be most affected? And Molasses Boy, are you integrating AI into any of your business ventures right now? All right, I have many thoughts on AI, and we have two separate brands, Med School Insiders and Kevin Jubbal MD. Med School Insiders, we always strive to be as objective and data-backed and thorough and balanced as possible. And we did a video on how AI would replace radiologists. And we worked with radiologists who actually specialize in AI research in radiology, and I worked with them on that. Ooh. Ow. My standing desk just started going down. What is going on, dude? The computers are attacking me. My AI is taking over my standing desk. Ow, that hurt. I guess AI didn't like me talking about it. So yeah, on the Kevin Jubbal MD channel, it's more of my opinion. And in my opinion, I feel like AI will significantly reduce the number of physicians we need. It's not going to completely replace them initially, right? By the time it completely replaces physicians, many other jobs will also be completely replaced. However, I do see that when you increase the productivity and the effectiveness of any given individual contributor by, let's say, an order of magnitude, then obviously you need fewer people in those roles. And that's what I think is coming in the not super distant future. Because what people don't understand is that medicine is highly, highly, highly algorithmic. And we like to sometimes kid ourselves to think that we're some special brainiacs that aren't following a complex algorithm and using various cues, even the history, right? The communication skills there, which AI is actually getting better and better at, it all fits into the overall algorithm. It's not like AI would be able to do motivational interviewing. AI would be able to read between the lines and pick up cues. AI is even working on, I'm actually advising at a startup that will read your facial expressions and body language. So the stuff is getting very advanced. Now, going back to the question, I do not think that doctors are going to be obsolete. Not at all. I do think that certain specialties will be displaced more so than others because of AI, because of how easily the algorithms are able to augment the effectiveness of certain specialists. And there is some level of disagreement with regards to which fields in medicine are going to be more easily displaced than others. I've seen some people say that psychiatry is super low likelihood because it is all conversational and there's so much. Therapy is not necessarily as algorithmic in a way, and I don't necessarily agree with that, but I'll be making a full video covering which specialties I think are higher, medium, and lowest risk in terms of AI's influence in displacing those physicians. Now, how am I integrating AI into my business ventures? We're actually leveraging AI to improve various courses. So we have a Casper AI course where you can prepare for Casper by doing simulated scenarios, and it will give you this very targeted comprehensive feedback using AI. Same thing with AAMC Preview. And the most powerful showcase of this technology is actually our Interview AI course, which is both, there's one for med school and one for residency. And emotion detection, tonality, how you say things. It coaches you on all these things. It's actually very impressive. Yeah, you got to try for yourself. When you buy the full course, you get the option to upload your full application, and it will even ask you targeted questions based on your experiences. It's that good. Jared Woodland 1. How important do you think confidence is for doing well in medical school? I realized at the end of my first year that believing in my study approach, though intangible, was a huge factor in my clarity and performance. Also, I've shifted from using Anki as my primary tool to more of a supplement while focusing on understanding material through class and active learning. Do you think students misuse Anki by relying on it too heavily? I'd love to hear your take. Thank you for all you do. Your content helped me crush the MCAT, succeed in research, and thrive in my first year of med school. My wife might be tired of me waiting for your videos every Sunday at 11 a.m. Jared, thanks so much for the support. I'm stoked to hear that you're doing well in med school, and I'm glad that the videos are helpful too. I think confidence is important in the sense that you don't want to be constantly second-guessing yourself. Certain people, they'll jump from one study strategy to the next because they're not getting the results they want, and they think it's their study strategy. So they keep jumping, but they never give it enough of a chance to see if that strategy they're currently working on actually will work and if they can succeed with that. So you don't want to be lacking confidence or have imposter syndrome where you feel like you don't belong, you're going to be found out for being deeply unqualified to be in med school. But at the same time, it can't be just confidence, because if people are very confident that, hey, I'm a visual learner or my VARC learning style is this, they're leaving gains on the table, because effective study strategies are effective study strategies regardless of who you are. In other words, regardless of your learning style, using active learning techniques will result in better performance. Some people just feel less resistance because active learning by definition is higher friction and is going to be a little bit more challenging than just rereading your highlights, things like that. So confidence is important, but I think the most important thing is focusing on those evidence-based study strategies, which we have a whole playlist on medschoolinsiders.com that covers all those details for the viewers who aren't familiar with that. Sounds like Jared probably has already seen some of our study strategy videos. And going to Anki now, I do think that a lot of people misuse spaced repetition with active recall in general, because what flashcards do is they help you memorize a fact in isolation. Now with MEM, for the MCAT, we provide review sheets and even excerpts of the review sheets underneath the answers, because then you have the context. So that helps address one of those issues by giving you context as to where that fact fits in. Because otherwise, what you'll find, and this is what I found when I was in med school using Anki religiously, is that you'll memorize these facts, but then you can sometimes either confuse them or not understand how they fit into a larger picture. So imagine this scaffolding that you have to build, this physical big scaffolding. That is your understanding of the material. And as you build this scaffolding, this understanding, you're then able to place facts in the appropriate place in that scaffolding. It's a lot easier to place them versus just having them all in a pile. By having the understanding, memorization comes a lot easier. There are certain things that will have to just be rote memorized, but most things can fit into a scaffolding based on you understanding that, yes, cardiac output equals heart rate times stroke volume, right? Not just memorizing each of those letters or each of those variables, but understanding why and how they relate. So I like what you're doing by focusing on understanding the material through class active learning. I think that is mission critical. Yes, many people do misuse flashcards just to memorize facts. And then on test day, they don't actually, depends on the test. There are certain tests, especially in college, where it's just rote memorization. But especially when you start getting to med school, it's going to require a bit of critical thinking. And you have to put multiple pieces together. It's not just, hey, did you memorize that one fact? It is, you memorize that one fact, but now you have to do second order thinking and sometimes third order thinking. With that fact, how do you manipulate it? How do you change? How does your assessment change based on these other factors in the vignette? So understanding material through creating summary sheets, review sheets was one of my favorites, where you would create tables to compare and contrast similar elements that you could otherwise confuse. Feynman technique was excellent. And expanding on the Feynman technique, don't just explain it in simple terms to other people, but in your study groups, actually have them challenge you and ask questions and follow-ups and try to find the holes in each other's understanding. All right, now let's go on to research, because I get a ton of questions about research both on this channel and on Med School Insiders. Simmer Jyoth Sohal says, one of the biggest challenges I'm facing during medical school is finding and getting involved in research. It's hard to balance coursework and clinical responsibilities while trying to join a project that actually leads to a publication. A lot of opportunities seem to require prior experience, which makes it even tougher to get started. I want to gain research experience, but figuring out how to do that without it taking away from my studies has been a struggle. So two things here, proactivity and numbers. So when I say numbers, I mean it's a numbers game in the sense that you have to reach out to many different labs and PIs in order to secure a position. It is a long-term play as well. You're not going to just do this week and then be set for next week. Normally it's going to take a couple weeks. They may want to do an interview with you. And sometimes the opportunity is only for the summer, and maybe you're getting started in February or March. So it is one of those things that does require patience, but also a large volume of outreach from you. Now, many of these opportunities requiring prior experience, first of all, many of them will not. So focus on those initially. However, if the ones that you're really focused on, the ones that you really care about and are interested in and motivated by require prior experience, keep in mind that what you can do is reach out to the PI and say, hey, I acknowledge that I don't have experience here. However, take a look at, if it's a wet lab, look at my, I have experience in my organic chemistry doing these similar techniques, blah, blah, blah. I'm eager to learn. I'm very passionate about these reasons. And you will find places that will make exceptions for you. Again, don't rely on it. It is still a numbers game. Now, figuring out how to balance research without it taking away from your studies being a struggle. This really points back to time management and productivity and study strategies, time blocking, using active study methods to reduce the amount of time you need to study. You should have time for things beyond just studying, right? Hopefully you're exercising, you're getting enough sleep, you're studying, you're hanging out with friends on the weekends, and still getting good grades and having time for research. So it is a lot, but focusing on those strategies, and I can give you a few just like right off the top of my head that would be more applicable to research in particular. So first, it depends on the type of research you're doing and the type of tasks you have. If you're doing bench work, basic science stuff, then you have to go in and you're going to be, in a wet lab, pipetting, etc., which is what I did for a few years in college. What I started doing in med school personally was more clinical research, which sometimes you have to do it in person. And like I was interviewing patients for a pediatric gastroenterology informed consent study. But other than that, a lot of this research I could do on my own time, between classes, during breaks, stuff like that. There are also probably times when you are less productive with your studying. For me, it's Fridays. The afternoons and the evenings, I'm not doing my best quality work there in terms of studying, but if I do research or other projects, there's not really much of a hit. So it's about trying to figure out where you can fit that into your schedule because you do not want your grades to suffer. Paulino Garate 9915, how to effectively publish in journals and getting stuck in the process. Publishing in a journal is like the last step. So it depends on where you are in the process. I think if you have no research experience, the first step is getting involved with various labs and with various PIs that can help mentor you and teach you the process. And again, you have to put in your own effort. Don't just expect them to spoon feed you and hold your hand every step of the way. When you take initiative and you show that you can be a bit of a self-learner, and now with AI and all these YouTube videos that are so informational, it's easier than ever. Getting involved in research is a very high friction, steep learning curve process. It can be very intimidating. And it took me years until I started enjoying it because there was so much friction and just steep learning curve at the beginning. But you keep at it, and I got to the point where it was this thing I felt very proficient in, and then I found it fun, which I never thought I would say. And we realized that this is a huge pain point. So at Med School Insiders, we actually released an ultimate research course designed for both pre-meds and med students. It's guided by me, Dr. Sean Anderson, and Dr. Jubbal Patel. And the three of us walk you through an entire process. It's extremely thorough, and from A to Z, from the very beginning, getting involved in your first research projects to even the more advanced things. How do you publish dozens of papers in a single year? So we walk you from step one all the way to the most advanced steps. And these are the same tactics that we used because each of us has, I think it's more than 60 research items. That's abstracts, presentations, publications, more than 60 each. That's 180 between three of us. So check that out below. It's definitely going to help you. It's exactly designed for the pain points that you're experiencing. Ronak Patel, 7919, I struggle with being able to get and do research at a small college. Only about 100 science undergrads and no professors with research relating to the medical field. Currently have to slug it out doing chemistry research. Any advice? Yes, it is going to be a slug at a smaller college that doesn't have as much of a built-up science program, but it's not impossible. So first of all, leverage what you can and what you're most interested in at your institution, but don't be afraid to branch out. That means not only in your city, but you can even email other PIs, other researchers in other cities, other states that are doing things that you're interested in. And as long as you have, like if you're a high conscientiousness, high effort, you care, you're putting in a lot of effort into your communication, your emails, your initial work with them, you're reliable, you under-promise, over-deliver. They say, hey, get this thing done by next week. You get it done in 3 days, and it's really polished, high-quality stuff. They're going to want to work with you. I mean, you don't have to do it only at your local institution. I actually did some projects remotely with plastic surgeons who I very much respected, who wrote some excellent books and who were really top in their field. So I reached out to them, even though I was hundreds of miles away, and I worked with them and got things published, and they were impressed, right? That made the right impression on them. We do cover that as well in the Ultimate Research course, so check that out, linked below. UMed, Norkalov. As someone who decided to pursue medical school in my junior year of undergrad, I am behind on extracurriculars, especially research, as it's the most confusing part of extracurriculars without much information on how to get started. Yeah, man, I totally get it. You are not alone. This is a very normal thing. I felt the same way when I was in college. When I first was getting started with the research, it was painful, right? And for better or worse, the importance of research is only increasing as the years go on, because research, when it comes to medical school and residency admissions and matching, is a game. So it's kind of sad to say that, because ideally what you want is for research to be all about moving scientific understanding and progress forward. And the truth is, the vast majority well over 90% of research does not do that. And that's not just because of pre-meds and med students. That's just research as a whole. The ultimate goal and vision is to, again, progress science forward. But for many different careers, including becoming a doctor, it is also a game. So you want to publish a high number of publications, you want to present, you want to get abstracts, you want to be as impressive and as prolific as you can. And if you have these really hard-hitting publications in high-impact journals, Nature, Science, things like that, incredible. But you don't need that. And doing that is actually incredibly challenging because people who are working on research full-time oftentimes aren't even able to break through on that. So when you look at the data of, let's say, residency matching, the number of research items for average matriculants in various specialties has increased. I think only one specialty either stagnated or went down slightly, and every other specialty has gone up significantly. Like plastic surgery, I think bumped up by like 14 or 15 plus items. Neurosurgery, the average is now like 37. I think plastics is maybe like 34. And the beautiful thing about research too is that unlike any other extracurricular, the research you do in undergrad is going to help you get into residency. So other extracurriculars, the things you do in undergrad only matter for getting into med school. And the things you do in med school help you get into residency. So it's very much segmented out. But when it comes to your residency application, all the research you've ever done, all the abstracts, all the presentations, all the publications, you can include on your CV. And as a result, that research item list gets longer and longer. So the cool thing with research is that it's not really low effort, high reward, but it is one of those things you can do that is, let's say, medium effort, very high reward. And again, check out the Med School Insiders Ultimate Research course linked below. If you have any questions, let us know. We're here to help. And our whole goal with that course is to make it as painless as possible because we were there. We know how painful it is, especially if you're not one of those diehard research people. You're doing it because you want to improve your competitiveness. I understand the friction. I understand how hard it is. We've been there. And we're going to help you get through that. Tyson King, 3788, can you explain the current circumstances regarding mid-level creep? What are NPs and PAs actually allowed to do, and what is outside of their scope? I know a lot of people at my undergrad right now who are switching out of pre-med because they believe they can do just as much as an NP or a PA. It depends on the state. And that also changes year to year. So certain states are either loosening restrictions or tightening up restrictions. And I think long-term, I mean, we're now getting better data that shows the outcomes are not the same. Oftentimes, you'll find that NPs and PAs will point to very flawed studies that say, hey, look, we're just as good. It's like, well, what the study is actually comparing is a mid-level underneath the supervision of a physician versus a physician have similar outcomes. But when you have an independent mid-level that does not have a supervising physician compared to a physician, then you do not have equivalent outcomes. What you'll find there is you'll have generally much higher costs for the same patient outcome or worse patient outcomes. So given these data on cost and patient outcomes, what I anticipate happening in the future, this is not in the next year or two, but I'm talking 5, 10, 15 years from now, I anticipate that more and more states are going to start dialing back on the level of autonomy that they're providing to mid-levels because mid-levels simply don't have the same level of training. So right now, we're in the age of maximum encroachment when they're being able to do more and more on their own. But we're starting to learn that there are risks associated with that. Obviously, hospitals want to do this because it saves them a lot of money. But ultimately, if patient outcomes are suffering, then there's going to be a pushback on that. And the pendulum is going to swing the other way. So I don't think that long-term these trends are going to continue. So if you do want autonomy, you do want independence, and you want to feel like you have the best possible training that you can in medicine, go the physician route. Go MD, go DO. And I would not suggest going mid-level route if you want to have that autonomy, because what mid-levels are able to do right now, I don't think is going to last long-term. And that's just focusing on primary care, right? If you want to do surgery, you want to do these complex procedures, you can't ever do that. Not now, not in the future, as a mid-level. The Rockin' BK, I'm interested in hearing your take on entrepreneurship options for med students and doctors who are not interested in starting a YouTube channel, but want to experiment with things on the side. You've mentioned YC and indie hackers before. Can you talk more in depth about how to approach things and what you've learned in your journey? Thanks. I love this question. This is so cool. I think you're going to be in for a treat because we have, I can't exactly tell you what yet, but I have something in the works that is very much going to address this question of yours. And we'll be telling you more in the next month or two. So stay tuned on this channel and also on the Kevin Jubbal MD newsletter, which you can find on kevinjubbalmd.com. Yeah, so it sounds like you're a tinkerer, you're a creator, right? You like creating things. And when you say indie hackers, that's very much like a solo person creating something from scratch. I think that it's easier to do something like that on the side while you are either a med student or a resident or attending. To do something like Y Combinator, you're not doing that on the side. Y Combinator, by definition, requires you to be full-time. And even if it did not, it's so competitive and so challenging and so difficult that you need to be doing something full-time. Now, that wouldn't mean necessarily quitting medicine. What that could mean is, let's say, between your third and fourth year, you take a year off. And during that year off, you work on your project and you apply to Y Combinator, things like that. So yeah, Y Combinator, it's, I've actually been working with two really sharp guys. I was advising in their company for, I think, like 2 years ago. And then they got into Y Combinator last year. And it's just a really incredible program. You get connected with some of the brightest minds out there. It's really inspiring stuff. There are other options too, though, right? So like what first sparked my interest was medical devices, biomedical innovation. And that's something I've talked about previously, like Blue Link, Biomedical Incubator, Stanford Biodesign, where you're combining medicine, engineering, and business expertise on these interdisciplinary teams and creating these medical device startups. And the possibilities are truly endless. But again, stay tuned. We have some exciting stuff in the works that is going to address this exact thing, because I find it a lot of fun too. I mean, I've been coding myself on the side for the last couple months, getting back into it. Haven't really coded since high school. And it's fun to create things. It's so exciting and rewarding. I just wish that I had more than 24 hours in a day. Kevan Jayasuriya. Dr. J, can you recommend... Dr. J, what a throwback. Back when I used to not use my real name because I was concerned about privacy and not wanting residencies to know because I was applying to residency. How things have changed. Back then, social media not nearly as accepted. Can you recommend for maintaining your body whilst grinding at the desk? Actually, yeah, I totally have some recommendations there. Excellent question, and I've tried to address this with a few different solutions. Number one is a desk treadmill. So it's a flat, small treadmill you place under your desk and you walk on it while working. The issue that I have is that little motion from walking up and down, side to side, is enough to distract me and break my focus. So what I have been doing for the last 3+ years is using a stationary bike. And I have two setups. One is a high budget, one is a low budget. The high budget one is a Wahoo Kicker Shift bike. It's the cheaper of the two. They have like a full motion one. I don't do that. I just do the stationary bike. It's still very pricey though. I think it's like $2,500. And then you get kitted out in your cycling stuff, the cycling shoes, because it has the clip-in pedals. It's like designed for cyclists that want to train indoors. And I have a little desk in front. The whole setup is way too pricey for what I use it for. It's kind of silly in hindsight because I don't use any of the shifting features or functions, and I literally just set it in erg mode, like fixed power, and just ride. But what I do is I'll do my internal team meetings on that bike like 4 to 5 times per week minimum. And that's how I get all my zone 2. So while I'm in zone 2, I'll be doing an internal meeting, and generally I'm not doing much talking, so it's not really a huge issue. And if I do need to talk, it's brief. In zone 2, you can talk in full sentences. It's just a little bit uncomfortable. So that's what I've been doing. And then the second option, the budget option, is actually the Walking Pad W1B desk bike. And that one is way cheaper. I think it's like less than $500. And it's not a smart bike. So the Wahoo Kicker bike can sync everything to Strava, my cadence, my power output, my speed, distance, all that stuff. This one doesn't do that, but I think most people don't care that much. So what you do is you set up, you have a nice tabletop that's integrated into the actual bike. So it's not even a separate thing like what I have to do with my Wahoo Kicker. Place your laptop there, you can have your meeting. And you just have a dial for your resistance, super easy to use. And what I like about it too is that it's highly compact. So you can fold it away completely into like essentially smaller than a suitcase, smaller than a carry-on, at least in certain dimensions and thickness. I guess the width is smaller, but the length and height would be a little bit larger than a carry-on. But it's pretty compact and you can tuck it away. So at my girlfriend's apartment, where there isn't much space to have a permanent, fixed, large bike that's taking up half a room, then we use this there, and it's actually been excellent. The main downside is just that it doesn't track all those metrics and sync it online because it's not a smart trainer. But again, I don't think most people care that much about that. I'm just kind of weird in that I like the data tracking and all those things. But if you want to give it a shot yourself, then check out the link in the description below and use coupon code KevinJubbalMD for 20% off. Is it a bad idea to take histology and anatomy simultaneously? No, I don't think so. I mean, look at your total credits in college and how difficult each course is. Don't take too many heavy, hard-hitting science courses all at once because it will be a challenging semester or quarter and your grades may suffer. But I mean, med students are oftentimes doing anatomy with histology concurrently. Mohammed Saif 2332. I just realized I forgot to mention the commenter's name in the last couple questions. Sorry, guys. Should I specialize in something that has a high salary or something that has a low salary but higher scope of earning in private practice? Private practice always comes with a risk of failure. It is low risk. I like both of them. The one with the high salary is 4 years longer in training. I'm curious what these specialties are, because generally speaking, a specialty that has a higher salary also is going to have a higher ceiling for private practice. So I'm curious what you're referring to, but regardless, you're going to be doing this for decades, whatever your specialty is. Don't choose something primarily based on compensation, because whatever specialty it is, you're going to make enough. The extra 100K per year is not going to meaningfully change your life in that dramatic of a way. And even if it's an extra 200K per year, right? What's more important is how much you enjoy that specialty, the bread and butter, not the zebras, not the sexy things you see once every 5 years, but the thing that you're working in and day out with your patients. Do you enjoy that? Because if you don't, you make extra money, you're going to burn out, you're going to be unhappy, you're going to end up making less money because you'll eventually quit or put in fewer hours, etc. But if you do the thing that you enjoy, you may actually paradoxically make more money because you'll put in more time, more effort. You may want to start the private practice and work hard at it. And in the end, I think that overall, salary shouldn't be the primary concern. And when it comes to private practice, just understand that now you're running a business. There are pros and cons that come with that. If you're the kind of person that likes control, if you've ever been an employee someplace and you're like, why do we do it this way? We can do things differently. We can do things better. You may be better suited, but there's a cost there. You can't just leave everything at work. Oftentimes it will come home with you. You'll put in more hours. You'll be thinking about it more frequently. That's stuff that I don't mind, but it's not for everyone. I'm in Halos. Why do you bother with ads? Your video would be so much better without them. At the end of the day, producing these videos costs a lot of money, and our AdSense over the last few years has only declined. It's not, I mean, for a lot of YouTube channels, it's declined. For full-length YouTube channels. So it's what keeps the lights on, really, because we have a whole team. We have producers and editors and content writers, and we have a whole team that keeps this show running. There's no way that I alone can run Med School Insiders plus Kevin Jubbal ND plus Jubbal and Cars. That's 3 separate brands, 5 to 6 full-length videos per week. It takes a whole team, and we have to have some integrations in order to keep the lights on and to keep this sustainable. Otherwise, somebody would not be able to keep producing videos. And the other thing is, I am very particular about who I work with, and I don't work with companies or do integrations that I don't actually agree with or don't use myself. So we're very choosy, and that's for good reason. We never want to promote stuff that we don't actually think is going to benefit the viewer. Richard Co 6166, how does studying differ in the preclinical versus clinical years? Preclinical, you have a lot more flexibility and greater control of your time. So you can study in the exact way that you want. You can go to classrooms, empty classrooms at the med school. You can do it at home. You can do it with friends or solo. Like, there's a lot of control. And when it comes to clinical, your control goes out the window because you're in the hospital or the clinic most hours, most days, and you need to study in little pockets of downtime here and there. You're not going to be in the optimal situation, the optimal, computer screens, multi-monitor setup, or with your friends. It's going to be here and there. And it's a little bit messier too. So not just in the structure, but also in preclinical, you have a curriculum and you're following along, right? And you're learning one thing after the next and you're preparing for a test. In clinical, based on what you're seeing, just by chance, by random chance, that week in the hospital, what does the patient come in with? That is a disease process that you're going to be prioritizing. And your attending or your residents may even assign a presentation, essentially, where you do some research on the disease process and then you present it to the little team you have on the medicine ward or wherever it is. And it's a little bit messier, unstructured, but it is also more active in that way because you're applying it to something in front of you. You're teaching others by forced presentations. So I very much enjoyed preclinical, actually, because based on my personality type, I love that full control over how I study, where I study, when I study, and getting to do it with friends. I was studying with a couple people very regularly in my preclinical years, and it was so fun. Like, it was like hanging out and like learning stuff and seeing your knowledge just skyrocket compared to when you were before med school to during med school. Wow, how did I learn so much? And it's a rewarding positive feedback loop. And then clinical, I like studying in the certain specialties that I thoroughly enjoyed, like various surgery specialties, Internal medicine I thought was pretty cool because you're like a detective in a way. But there were other specialties, psychiatry, OB-GYN, and even certain subspecialties in pediatrics where it was a lot harder for me to be as excited about studying and excited about learning. So yeah, there are definitely different pros and cons to both, but the study strategies you learn in your preclinical years will be very helpful during the clinical years. Luke Bowman 9823, is it worth taking a gap year to strengthen your application to go to an MD school, or should you just accept a DO acceptance? I have been working with some clients on this recently, actually. For a lot of people, it's worth it to go to MD 1 year later. And it actually comes back to one of my favorite topics, asymmetric risk, right? And how we use that when making decisions about applying to med school and just medicine overall, which is that, think about the upside. The upside of you choosing to go DO this year is that you get a sooner medical school acceptance and you earn a physician's salary 1 year sooner. The average physician salary is $355,000 as of most recent data. However, if you go DO, it's going to be a little bit lower than that, maybe like 40, 320. Who knows what the exact number is? The reason being, most DOs, or a higher proportion of DOs, I should say, go into primary care specialties, which are on the lower end of compensation. And that average of 355 includes all doctors, including specialists. So let's just use round numbers. So let's say $300,000. $300,000 upside of going DO 1 year sooner, because that's 1 year salary of an attending, right? If you go MD 1 year later, $300K less in compensation, right? However, there is a significant and potential huge upside, which is that you have a greater chance of choosing the specialty that you actually want. And you're going to be practicing in this specialty for 3+ decades, right? It's probably worth it. And during that time, by the way, you're going to make millions and millions and millions of dollars. So $300K is not insignificant, but it's also not life-changing money. That 1 extra year to strengthen your application gives you greater optionality to choose the specialty that is right for you in med school. Now, most pre-meds at least think they have a good idea of what specialty they will want to ultimately practice. However, based on the data, 3/4 of pre-meds change their mind about their intended specialty. I was one of them. Most pre-meds are going to be changing their mind, 3 out of 4. So if you go in saying, hey, DO is fine because I want to do family medicine or pediatrics or psychiatry and it's chill, it's whatever. But then you get into med school, you get some exposure, more experiences, and you say, wow, actually, what I really love is dermatology or neurosurgery. It's going to be a lot harder. Now, do DOs get into derm and neurosurgery and plastic and all the specialties? Yes, but at much lower rates than MDs. You know, there is also, again, I don't want to promote a stigma, but there is a stigma, right? By me denying it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. There is a stigma. If you go into hospitals, if you talk to residents, if you talk to attending physicians, there is a stigma that exists, not amongst all of them, but amongst a certain proportion. And even amongst the public, right? The public is getting more and more informed. A lot of them know what MD is. They're like, hey, what's a DO? Is that like what kind of doctor is that? Is that a real doctor? So there are these downsides to it. If you are able to just take 1 year and have a pretty high degree of certainty that you can get into an MD school, that is usually the route that is best for most students, but not all students, right? Maybe you really care about OMM or OMT and you're super gung-ho about family medicine and you want to serve underserved populations in your rural town, then yeah, in those cases, DO seems like a stronger fit. But the overwhelming majority of students that go DO are doing it because they're not able to get an MD acceptance. And usually strengthening your application is going to be worth it. Simon Akintulir, 1836. Sorry, I'm butchering that. Best advice for Caribbean med students looking to match into US from a non-Ross uni. I mean, the basics still apply here in the sense that you want to have excellent step 2 CK score. You want to honor all your rotations, or as many as you can. You want to have notable research. You want to be as competitive of a residency applicant as possible. And you want to frame your application in a way that the residency program, any concerns they have about you being a Caribbean student are addressed. How are you framing your story? What's your narrative? How do your essays come across to the admissions committee member? And Simon, we would actually love to help you with your application. At medschoolinsiders.com, we have residency matching services. So we actually pair you with a physician advisor who has served on residency adcoms. They're going to be working through your application to help strengthen it. Dr. Riz K, what are 3 tips for someone who's just starting his or her clinical rotations? Arrive early, stay late, read up on any cases and any patients that you have ahead of time so that you are prepared. Be humble. If someone points out, an error or mistake, don't jump to trying to defend yourself. Just own it, thank them for the feedback, and improve upon that. Don't pull other people down. It's a super bad look. Not your fellow med students and not your residents. Like, if the attending asks a resident a question and you know the answer and the resident is kind of stumbling, do not blurt out the answer. That makes the resident look bad. Wait your turn. If he does eventually ask you, then you can answer the question. Be chill, be nice. You never know who's watching. And just because they're not your immediate supervisor doesn't mean that treating someone else poorly will not come back to bite you. It's just a shitty thing to do. Don't do that. And use whatever little downtime you have to study. It'll make your life a lot easier. You'll get more sleep and you'll have time to still exercise and do other things when you get back home. Doing Anki in the downtime as you're waiting 5-10 minutes here and there is worthwhile. And I mean, from the house of God, I have to say, eat when you can, sleep when you can, and don't fuck with the pancreas. Ray Keith, pre-med here. I am a non-traditional student starting college at 30 and pursuing medicine because my stage 4 cancer changed my life. Now I'm pursuing my dreams. Should I tell med school and others about my cancer diagnosis that I'm in remission for and how it's a drive to do more and to be better? That is a great question. Now, we oftentimes work with students that have various health conditions and concerns, whether cancer or psychiatric conditions or physical conditions, and choosing whether or not to disclose that is a very personal thing, but also a strategic decision that requires a lot of careful thought. So without knowing all the details, I would say you probably could share it. You just want to be very careful with how you do so. You want to focus on the purpose, the drive, the benefits, the way it has helped you arrive at this place of wanting to become a doctor, rather than, pity or overly focusing on the details of your medical diagnosis and, it's stage 4, but it's remission and getting too much into the nitty-gritty. You also don't want to make the whole narrative just about an illness. I mean, it's life-changing stuff, obviously, but it's about how it is perceived by the med school adcoms. You want to balance vulnerability with strength. You want to be transparent, but also tactful at the same time. And there's a very there's a delicate balance here, and you want to make sure that you craft it in the right way, that it serves as an asset to your application rather than being perceived as a liability. And if you'd like a doctor with real admissions committee experience to help you with that, we'd be happy to do so at medschoolinsiders.com. Phil McCracken, at what point do you think a pre-med should stop trying to pursue getting into med school? I currently have a 3.2 GPA, though I did have to retake 2 prerequisite classes for med school in order to get a passing. I still have 2 more years for my biology degree, but I think my chances of getting into med school are low. The very beginning of the question made me think that you had tried many times to get into med school. You did a post-bac or an SMP. You did all these various things and you still haven't gotten in. My guy, you haven't even graduated college yet and you're already questioning it. So there is, let's say you have 2 more years. So you're halfway through college. There is enough time for you to bring up your GPA significantly. If you're at a 3.2 cumulative right now and you got a perfect 4.0 for the next 2 years, you'd be at a 3.6 by the time you graduate. And seeing that huge, massive upward trajectory, med schools would love to see that. So first of all, don't give up so soon. Number 2, focus on why you're getting a 3.2, why you had to retake those classes, and what you can change. It's not about how intelligent you are. It's not something you're born with or not. It's about your study and test taking strategies. So you're almost certainly not studying effectively. You're not using active study techniques. You're not maybe putting enough time, focused attention on studying. Maybe you're distracted. Maybe you're not sleeping enough, memory consolidation, mental performance as well. It could be so many things. I recommend you start with our study strategies and time management playlists on Med School Insiders. There's going to be a ton of actionable advice there that's going to help you bring up a 3.2 GPA. Absolutely. So don't give up at this point. And even if you had already graduated with a 3.2, at that point, I would say do a post-bac. But in the post-bac, you would have to be crushing, right? You could not be getting another 3.2 in your post-bac. So, yeah, don't give up, man. You're halfway through college. This is the time when you see things are not going in the right direction. You have plenty of time. Well, plenty of time to implement the change, but not much time to actually figure out how to course correct. You want to get on that course correction path as soon as possible so you can start bringing up your GPA. You don't want to wait another year. 3 years at a 3.2 GPA. There's not much that you can do to change that. Even with a perfect 4.0 in your senior year, it's only going to budge up slightly. Katie and Dream Brain, what's your opinion about getting surgery training at a big, well-reputed academic program versus a small one? As for the first one, an individual typically needs to invest a lot more time, probably spending 2 to 3 years extra doing research, effort, sacrifice, more things in life, and need a whole bunch of research experience, 10 to 20 publications to even be considered for the spot. Okay, so I'm curious what specialty we're talking about and which programs in particular. So for a lot of these specialties, surgical subspecialties, to get into a highly prestigious academic program versus a community program is usually not an extra 2 to 3 years of doing research. 1 year of doing research can definitely move the needle. But there are pros and cons. What you're going to see is that certain larger institutions, because they are larger, they have these huge teams. They're sometimes, they have well-developed other specialties too that may have overlapping responsibilities with the specialty that you're in. There is a risk that you may get a lower volume, lower autonomy. I shouldn't really say lower complexity because the cases will be more complex, but like your involvement on them may be reduced and the complex things may go to the more senior people. So there are pros and cons. There is the like pedigree, the brand name recognition that can help you with your career as well. At a smaller community program though, you're not going to have the same issues with like the encroachment of other specialties. You're going to have more autonomy. You may not have the same level of complex cases because generally those are going to larger tertiary care centers, but you'll oftentimes learn faster and have more hands-on experience, even if you don't have access to those more complex cases, at least initially. There are pros and cons to each, and it depends on your ultimate goals, right? Where do you want to practice? What kind of practice do you want to have? And generally, 10 to 20 publications to even be considered for the spot. Research items and publications are different. So research items includes publications, abstracts, and presentations, and there's all these strategies that you can do to crank out a lot more than 10 to 20 in a year. A lot more than 10 to 20 in 6 months, actually, which is what I did. And it's not easy, but there are various methods and tactics, different types of studies, how you approach the studies, different data analysis techniques. There's all these ways you can reduce the friction to crank out an absurd number of publications. I think I did like 30 in a few months. Yeah, it was some really high number in less than half a year. The important thing to keep in mind is that you don't just pad your CV as well with nonsense case report and case series. That is easily seen through by the adcoms, and that will not impress anyone. These need to be actual quality studies. Yeah, I remember there was actually this one attending who saw all my publications and he was like, wow, Kevin, that's a lot in such a short period of time. Are these all legit? You know that they were like fake or something because the status was submitted on my CV, right? It wasn't accepted or, revisions or anything. By the way, pro tip, keep a CV updated every time you submit things for publication or you get acceptances, because otherwise you do that later, it's a pain in the butt. Just do it as soon as you get the decision. It takes a lot less time that way. It's like constantly, waiting for your dishes to pile up in the kitchen versus just every day, as soon as you eat, just like rinse them, put them in the dishwasher. It's that kind of thing. A few months later, the acceptances started rolling in. It is possible to publish way more than 10 to 20 in less than a year, not 2 to 3 years. And again, our ultimate research course, which you can find linked below, is going to help you with that, including all these tactics that I've used to crank out dozens and dozens in a single year. Nick So-O, advice for pre-med starting in community college and taking a non-traditional degree. So you need to be doing your medical school prerequisite courses, not at community college. You want to do that at a 4-year accredited institution. At a community college, the rigor, the difficulty is not the same, and therefore med schools, when reviewing your GPA, they're not going to be impressed by a 4.0 at a community college. So make sure you're taking your medical school prerequisites not at a community college, but at a 4-year institution. David Twig, C5J, is getting a bachelor's of science in nursing a good undergrad for becoming a doctor? I mean, there are pros and cons. It's not common because, well, let's just go through the pros and cons. So the main pro being that if you don't get into medical school, you have a fallback, which is nursing as the backup career. And there's going to be some level of overlap between the prerequisites, but not completely. That leads us to the con list, which is that number one, you're not going to have the same prereqs and a rather overlap of prereqs with major requirements compared to certain other more traditional biology majors, as an example. That's why biology majors are greater than 50% of majors chosen by pre-meds. That was neuroscience, some other popular ones, molecular biology, physiological sciences, and so on. Going back to the strengths, actually, you get strong clinical exposure. It shows that you have some commitment to healthcare, but the cons are notable too, right? So one is going to be the prereqs. Second is going to be the time and workload. To be doing all the pre-med things, MCAT, research, other extracurriculars, while doing nursing, is not going to be easy. And then the last thing would be perception by the adcoms, right? So adcoms are going to think, why did you choose nursing if you ultimately wanted to become a doctor? They may question how serious you are about becoming a doctor. Junior, Dr. Jubbal, hello, and thank you for taking the time to answer our questions. I wish to become a medical doctor. I'm a retired U.S. Army veteran with 20 years of honorable service. I earned an undergraduate and graduate degree in psychology, 3.99 and 4.0 GPA, BA and MA, very nice, and a bachelor's of science in alternative medicine with many medical school prerequisites, a GPA 3.99. Currently looking for an affordable place to teach me how to excel on the MCAT. Additionally, trying to find a place to earn a clinical experience to be competitive during the application process. However, I refuse to get the COVID-19 shot, making it impossible to earn said experience in my area. The only extracurriculars I do is making up for lost time with my family and staying as fit and healthy as I possibly can. All that said, I have 4 questions. Is this a fool's errand? Would I get selected to attend medical school if I went through this process with just a high or decent MCAT score? Does my years of service make me an attractive prospective medical student? Absolutely. If all of the answers above are not great, what do you suggest I do? Again, thank you for answering all of our questions, and thank you for what you do. And thank you for your service. These are very valid questions. So going through those questions, is this a fool's errand? No, not necessarily so. If you had a strong MCAT, and again, it's not just the MCAT GPA. A lot of people focus on that because it's the easiest to measure thing. But every year, guess what? There are people that have near perfect GPA, near perfect MCAT, which you could be, right? You could be one of those people with stellar MCAT. You already have a near perfect GPA. Many of those people don't get in. The overwhelming majority do get in, but many of them still don't. So it's not just the numbers, right? It's the other things too. It's your how you interview. It's your extracurricular experiences. It's how you portray yourself in your application, in your essays, your narrative. Right? Which ties into the next point. Yes, your service definitely makes you a more attractive medical student because it demonstrates discipline, resilience. It demonstrates a lot of attractive qualities that medical schools want to see. Now, as for clinical experience as a pre-med and all the options in your area are requiring it, you're just going to have to look outside your area because there are going to be opportunities that do not require the COVID-19 shot. It's no longer widely required and enforced in the way that it was a few years ago. But it sounds like in your area, it is still commonly required. So you'll have to look outside your area, unfortunately. And I already know we're going to get some political comments below. I have no interest in getting political on any of my YouTube channels, but I do understand that if you did get the COVID-19 shot, it would make this a lot easier for you. And I think COVID-19 vaccinations are very low risk. I got, I think, 1 and a booster, but I also understand that not everyone wants to do it, and I respect that. And I actually don't get boosters anymore for the last couple of years, just given the risk profile for the people in my age range and my demographics and such. So to the other viewers out there, let's keep it civil in the comments below, because I know there's going to be a lot of hate and a lot of political stuff as things go whenever it comes to COVID-19 and vaccines and stuff like that. So let's keep it civil. Now, going back to the MCAT, we have a full suite of products and services that can help you excel. So we have the MCAT course paired with MEM and also MCAT tutoring. We've seen phenomenal results with the students that we work with. We'd be happy to help you. Book a free call on our website. And we also do offer military discounts. Tariq Hamat, I'm having hard times with finding a good mentor throughout my journey. Yeah, finding a mentor is not an easy thing. Put yourself in the mentor's shoes. Oftentimes, mentors are bombarded. And I've actually seen this myself, like, by well-intentioned students that may come across in not the best way, where they're like,
hey, I need a mentor. You be my mentor now.
It's like, well, that's not how it works. You need to have some kind of relationship and some investment for that person to want to see you grow and succeed. Sometimes students get overly focused on finding a mentor and assigning someone to be their mentor, which is not really how it works. So you have to build that relationship. And even if you're not able to find a good mentor, there's so many books and videos and resources out there that can serve a function of not to replace a mentor, but to supplement some of the benefits that you would have from a mentor. Ashley, I am scared that I'll not do as well on the MCAT as I'm expecting myself to do. My extracurriculars never really stop, so there's no dedicated study block for me. So there are 2 approaches to the MCAT. One is shorter duration, higher intensity, where you're focusing more time on the MCAT, let's say 3 months, really focus on the MCAT. The alternate is a longer duration, lower intensity. So let's say 6 months, where you have some other things on the side, those extracurriculars that are not stopping. Hopefully you can have some level of flexibility that the few weeks leading up to the MCAT, you can at least reduce your extracurricular involvement. I remember for myself, I did research for, this is also with the old MCAT, granted. So I did 2 months of studying. The first month I was doing research on the side. The second month I did not do any research. I just focused on the MCAT alone. Oftentimes, if you speak to those who are the organizers and running the extracurriculars, they'll be understanding and at least be able to dial back your hours in those weeks leading up to your MCAT. Maya does gaming. Hi, Dr. Jubbal, big fan here. I'm 23 and blind in one eye. I don't have the best vision in the other. I lost it at 13 years old after a retinal detachment and then had a failed vitrectomy operation at 13, which has a 90% success rate. Sorry to hear that. I'm not considered legally blind. I can't drive a car because of this. I don't ever let this hold me back, though I'm working hard on my studies, robotics engineering, to one day work as an engineer on the Da Vinci minimally invasive surgical robot. That is awesome. Love that mindset. I told myself if I can't be the surgeons that use the Da Vinci, I'll be the engineer that helps build and design it. Love that. However, I do dream of one day going to med school and becoming a surgeon. Am I just forever doomed to fail as a surgeon because of my eyes? Will they be my downfall if I do that? How important are eyes and vision really as a doctor and as a surgeon? Thank you so much, Kevin, for reading my comment. It means a lot. Really thoughtful comment there. Thanks for sharing that. First of all, I love your attitude. That's the correct mindset to have. So first of all, across the spectrum of specialties in medicine, those that are surgical are going to be more vision dependent than those that are not. So you can definitely become a doctor and, internal medicine, PM&R, psychiatry. There's many specialties that are not going to be as vision dependent. Surgery is going to be much more vision dependent, obviously. You have depth perception with stereotactic vision. You're going to have the visual feedback that is guiding your actual manipulation of the tools. You have the fine motor coordination of the tools and instruments that's guided by your visual feedback. So yeah, having impaired vision, especially monocular vision, is going to be a significant obstacle. So that being said, there are some key questions to keep in mind here. Number one, how well have you adapted with your monocular vision? Because some people will actually develop functional depth perception even with monocular vision. Number two, how well do you adapt to fine motor skills that rely on visual guidance? So you could practice with suturing or various other fine motor tasks to see. And then number three, I recommend that you speak with an ophthalmologist, an occupational therapist, and see what they have to say. They'll be able to conduct a more formal assessment to see what kind of strengths and limitations you have in a clinical setting. Geoffrey James 7654, looking back, do you wish you finished plastic surgery, then went to business? Also, some tips to writing a great personal letter. Yeah, so it's a good question. If I took that path, that would have been 5 more years than what I already did. And in those 5 years, so much has happened with my businesses, and 5 years is not a short period of time. It would have been so cool to finish my residency and then do business after the fact, and then be able to combine plastic surgery with other entrepreneurial, endeavors and just curiosities. If I could wave a magic wand, I wish that I could have done both plastics and business, but I just knew that wasn't feasible. And even to this day, I know that's not feasible, not to do it at the capacity and the level that I wanted to, just because 24 hours in a day, right? And then to do plastic surgery first and then do entrepreneurship after, at that point I'd be 32, 33. My whole risk assessment calculation would be different. I'd probably be focused more on plastic surgery because at that point, the opportunity cost is hey, right now I could have a plastic surgery attending job doing X, where I was doing entrepreneurship, doing it on the side. I'll do a little bit, but I would never go all in because, the opportunity cost of walking away from plastics would then be much higher. When I left it, I still had 5 more years to become a fully trained plastic surgeon, right? So I did intern year. Even to this day, I think it was the right decision. But if I could wave a magic wand, it would be so cool to have 40 hours in a day and just do it all. Tips on writing a great personal letter. Look at examples. We actually provide multiple free examples. We have a whole personal statement database at medschoolinsiders.com. Link in the description. So look at examples, study the examples, see what they did well and what they did not do well. By the way, we also add commentary on those examples to say what we liked, what we didn't like. And then number 2, show, don't tell. A lot of people, the overwhelming majority of personal statements, focus on telling the reader what they did, why they're qualified, why they want to get into med school and become a doctor, and all those things. And you don't want to tell, you want to show. And what that means is you illustrate the concepts you want the reader to receive by telling stories and having them read between the lines. You don't say, hey, I'm hardworking. You tell a story about a time when you were hardworking and resilient instead. All right, guys, awesome questions. I'm getting really impressed the last few AMAs by how thoughtful these questions are. You guys are really bringing your A games, and I love that. Thank you so much. If I didn't answer your question, don't worry. We'll be doing more AMAs later this year. Subscribe so you don't miss them, and I will be answering several of those questions that we weren't able to address this time around. Much love, my friends, and I'll see you all in the next one.